working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Whoa. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God.
Good day, sisters and brothers. Welcome to our Sunday School class. My name is Reverend Clement Everton Clark, pastor of the Christian Circuit of Baptist Churches. We'll be looking at Beware of Human Trafficking. Our Bible focus is Genesis 16, 1 to 11, Genesis 37, 12 to 28, and 1 Timothy 1, 7 to 11. Our Bible truth: human trafficking existed in biblical times and is still present today. The illegal trade in person, then and now, is fueled by four things. These are greed, hate, violence, and other practices. Life question. There's a question I want to ask you to ponder while we go through the lesson. And this question is: how should I respond if human traffickers are targeting me or someone I know? Our unit overview, which is Fight Against Human Trafficking. For this month, we'll be looking at the impact of human trafficking. As Christians, we need to build our awareness of human trafficking. We also need to actively advocate against this atrocity and be willing to assist victims of the trade. What is human trafficking or trafficking in persons? It entails three things: act, that is recruitment, transportation, harboring, sale or receipt of human beings; means, threat or use of force, coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power or position, of vulnerability, and receipt of payments or benefits. And then we have purpose, exploitation. The exploitation comes in the form of prostitution of others, sexual exploitation, forced labor, slavery or similar practices, servitude, or removal of organs. All of these add up to trafficking in person. Let's look at that's life. What does this entail? Question: did you know that in any given day in 2016, 40 million people worldwide were victims of modern slavery? Yes, man. 40 million people. But closer home, nearly 350 victims of human trafficking were rescued by police in 13 Caribbean and Latin American countries in April of 2018. The Interpol coordinated Operation Libertad saved men, women, and children trafficked abroad and forced into work. The victims were found working in nightclubs, factories, markets, farms, and mines. Some worked in spaces no bigger than a coffin, said Kim Colcott of Interpol's human trafficking unit. If you look at the picture, you'll see a hand covering the mouth. Look at the eyes. The mouth keeps silent, and the eyes are wide open. But also, Tim Morris, Interpol's executive director of police services, told BBC that conditions in Guyana were particularly horrific. Their investigators rescued young women who were forced to work as prostitutes near remote gold mines. These locations from which they could not escape and which are hard for investigators to find. If you look at the picture, you see the money exchanging hands for a young woman whose hands are bound. You'll also recognize that meanwhile, the bosses at a factory in St. Vincent and the Grenadines strip Asian trafficking victims of their passports and force them into total dependence, taking all their money and means of transport from them. The traffickers target vulnerable people seeking to cross borders for work or a better life, or even moving from a poorer to a richer region in their own countries. Look again at the picture before you. You see what's happening there. Question. What do you know about human trafficking in your country? Right, and that is wherever country you are located. What do you know about human trafficking? Let us look quickly at our lesson summary. In this lesson explains the meaning, characteristics, forms, prevalence, and dangers of human trafficking. We also look at the emphasis. It also emphasizes that the trade in persons is wrong, both morally and legally. It's also sinful, and in addition, is an act of rebellion against God. We're going to take a quick look at Genesis 37, 12 to 28, under the subhead, sinful and illegal act of human trafficking. Joseph's brother were jealous of him because he was his father's favorite. They plotted to murder him, but his oldest brother, Reuben, in an attempt to save him, suggested that they put him in a pit alive. However, in Reuben's absence, the brothers, who were obviously knowledgeable of the slave trade, sold Joseph to some Midianite merchants in order to get rid of him and earn some money in the process. The brothers' action reflected illegal recruitment. It reflected abduction and also sale of Joseph for the purpose of exploiting him. All of these are components of human trafficking. Human trafficking is sinful and is an illegal act, as in Old Testament times, financially greed, hatred, and cruelty are fueling the trade in person today. In our time, people are being trafficked or traded through such methods as force, kidnapping, coercion, fraud, deception, or the abuse of power. The major reason for the criminal trade in persons are four things: cheap labor, sexual commercial gain, drug peddling, sale of organs. In most cases, this is purely for monetary gain. The act of trafficking in person is morally, criminally, spiritually, and socially wrong. It goes against God's command to treat all persons with love and respect. And you can read that in Romans chapter 13, verse 9 to 10. Traffickers may take advantages of the poverty of parents, resulting in children being sold into child labor, sex trafficking, or becoming victims of illegal adoption. Parents use the funds to pay off debts and sometimes have the false notion that they are creating a better life for their children. In many communities across Jamaica, the dons, the traffickers, may commandeer youth to take part in criminal activities or provide sexual favors. Out of fear, parents usually do not resist. Similarly, some parents willingly and knowingly send their children on the streets to beg to supplement the family income. This is an illegal act, and those of us who give to them out of pity are supporting the crime. Did you know that? Look at it again. Let's take a look at another passage, Genesis 16, 1 to 11. This is a familiar passage where we look at sinful decision creates hardship. In this passage, Hagar was an Egyptian slave to Sarah. She was exploited by Sarah and forced to have sexual relations with her husband Abram in order to bear her a child. Sarah's decision ultimately created hardship for Hagar. As soon as Hagar discovered she was pregnant, she became disrespectful and was eventually dismissed by her mistress Sarah. By coercion or forcing her servants to have sexual relations with her husband, Sarah became an instigator for sexual exploitation, which is a form of human trafficking. Acts of sexual exploitation, a type of human trafficking, are still in our world today, believe it or not. The majority, 87%, of the victims of human trafficking detected in the Caribbean and Central America in 2018 were trafficked for sexual exploitation, most of whom were women and children. Let's continue our look at passages. In 1 Timothy chapter 1, 7, verse 7 to 11, we are looking at this passage from the topic rebellion against God. And verse 10 of 1 Timothy 1. The trade in human are referred to as men stealers in the King James Version. Hear what verses 9 and 10 of 1 Timothy chapter 1 says. The law is made for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslaughters, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, for men stealers, for liars, for perjured persons. The New International Version of the same passage, the traffickers are described as slave traders. For the law is made for lawbreakers and rebels the ungodly and sinful, the unholy and irreligious, for those who kill their fathers or mothers, for murderers, for the sexually immoral, for those practicing homosexuality, for slave traders and liars and perjurers. And in the Good News translation, they are labeled as kidnappers. Hear what the verse says. Laws are made for the godless and sinful, for those who are not irreligious or spiritual, for those who kill their fathers or mothers, for murderers, for the immoral, for sexual perverts, for kidnappers, for those who lie and give false testimony. All these, men stealers, slave traders, and kidnappers, are viewed in the same light as murderers. They are listed among those lawless persons who exploit people for selfish or evil reasons. Our key verse here is 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 9 and the first part of verse 10. We also know that the law is made not for the righteous, but for lawbreakers and rebels, for murderers, for the sexual immoral, for those practicing homosexuality, for slave traders and liars and perjurers. Some things to ponder. Human trafficking is a present danger. We're asking you to report cases to the police. We're also asking you to be cautious about sharing personal information on social media. As you think about, we ask you to think about these things as you go from day to day. Think up seriously whether or not you are supporting human trafficking in what you do, in keeping silent, in turning a blind eye to these things. My sisters and brothers, thank you very much for the time that we have spent together. May God continue to richly bless you as you go through life, as you learn from these lessons. Have a wonderful day.
Jamaica Baptist Union Christian Education Department Sunday School Creative Expression Competition 2020. The theme for this year is COVID-19, Finding New Hope During Our New Norm. The three categories of creative expressions are drawing or painting, reflective prose, or reflective poetry. Your work should reflect your experience of COVID-19. Show how your faith has influenced your thinking or behavior during the pandemic. The age groups are younger children, 7 to 9 years, older children, 10 to 12 years, youth, 13 to 18 years, and adults, 19 years and over. The entry requirement is you must be a member of a Sunday school class with one of our Jamaica Baptist Union churches. Entry closing date is August 31st, 2020. There will be first, second, and third place prizes for each age group. Now, our competition rules and registration forms are available from your Sunday school superintendent, your church office, or the Jamaica Baptist Union website.